Hey guys, my name is Tania Patel and I'm a new teacher here at eCoreAcademy. I'll be teaching the course Algebra I, and in this video I'm going to be telling you guys what Algebra I is, the course outline of Algebra I offered at eCoreAcademy, the depth and difficulty level of our course, the prereqs and the materials you'll need for this course, and more. So before we get onto those good details, I do want to ask that you guys like this video, comment down below, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the post notification bell so that our platform can be reached out to those who will benefit from us and the content that we post. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right on with this video. So the first question you may be asking is, what even is Algebra I? Well, Algebra I is a course that is typically taken after pre-algebra, and it builds your basic and detailed knowledge on algebra, the branch of mathematics that deals with variables and different symbols to represent numbers in different situations, such as equations or formulas. You will see a lot of that because that is algebra, and you will see that in upcoming subjects. Therefore, Algebra I is very essential and required in your mathematical education, especially when studying upcoming mathematics subjects. After Algebra I, people typically will take geometry, Algebra II, and pre-calculus. That is what you're required to take in your high school career. Algebra I being the first course that you take, it is just the beginning. And you'll be using all this knowledge all the way up until you graduate high school, and you will probably even you'll first of all have to study math in college as well. So Algebra I is very, very important, and it will reappear in every single thing you take after this. So in my opinion, it is a very enjoyable subject, and I think it is because I let it be. I did not go in with a negative mindset. I went in saying that this is going to be fun and we're going to enjoy this. You and I are going to enjoy our math lessons together, and we're going to have great fun while studying Algebra I. So we're going to enjoy this, but I do want to kind of give a quick rundown of my experience with Algebra I. I did take it in 8th grade. In some cases and in some middle schools, Algebra I will be the highest course that is offered. My middle school was one of them. However, at eCoreAcademy, we will be covering the content that a high school Algebra I course will cover. Therefore, it will be more detailed and it will be more material, but it's going to be fun nonetheless. So that is that. And now let's continue on with the course outline of the Algebra I course that is offered here at eCoreAcademy. We have come up with 15 chapters that we'll be teaching you, that I'll be teaching you, and we'll start with Chapter 1, which is the fundamentals of Algebra I. This is a review chapter, therefore nothing new is going to pop up. No material in this chapter will be new material corresponding to Algebra I. However, it is a review, and we will be covering the basic and the most fundamental knowledge that you've carried from pre-algebra to here, and that you'll be using a lot in Algebra I. I do want to say that just because it's not going to be a chapter with new material, I would still want you to take it. I'd still want you to study through the first chapter, just because if you are unaware of the subjects that we cover in Chapter 1, you might want to take a step back and perhaps start with pre-algebra instead. Then we'll be going on to Chapter 2, which is a build-up chapter. Build-up chapter is essentially when we learn two different materials and we combine them together. In Chapter 2, we'll first be talking about absolute values, then we'll be talking about inequalities, and then we'll combine them together and talk about absolute value inequalities. Chapter 3, linear equations and graphing, is the same case. It is a build-up chapter. We'll first start with graphing. We will actually talk about the coordinate plane. Once again, it should be common knowledge from pre-algebra. You should have learned about it in pre-algebra, but I do want to make sure that you know you want to know that you know the details of the coordinate plane, and then we'll talk about linear equations such as the slope-intercept formula, the point slope form, and the standard form. And then we'll be learning how to graph all of those different types of linear equations on a coordinate plane. We'll end that with talking about the perpendicular and parallel lines, how they are shown on a graph, and how they're relevant, or why they're relevant in when graphing linear equations. Continuing on to chapter 4, we'll talk about functions. This is a very this is just the introduction of functions. We'll just be covering the basic rules of functions, what they are, and we'll also talk about more specifically the linear functions and their transformations. You'll see a lot more functions as we go on, but this is where you'll first be introduced to them. In chapter 5, we'll talk about lines of best fit. Once again, just an introduction to lines of best fit. We'll be talking about the linear correlation of lines of best fit, and we'll be talking about how we can organize data such as in scatter plots. Also, we'll end this chapter with interpolation versus extrapolation lessons, and after that, we'll go on to chapter 6, arithmetic sequence. Here we will have an introduction to arithmetic sequence, what it is, how we can find it, and we will also be finding or analyzing them through explicit and recursive formulas, which is used again for arithmetic sequences. And in chapter 7, we will be talking about systems of equations. This is definitely getting a little bit more complex than our previous chapters because now we're taking a step up. Here we're going to talk about, we're going to handle several equations at the same time. We're going to be working with systems of equations and learning how to solve systems of equations. If you're unfamiliar with what systems of equations are, just wait till chapter 7. You'll get all that detailed information there. Systems of equations, we'll learn how to solve them, as well as we'll end this chapter with applying systems of equations into real life problems, so real world applications. Excuse me. Then in chapter 8, we'll be talking about graphing linear inequalities. We already know what linear functions, linear equations are. We already know how to graph. We already know what inequalities are. It is a build-up chapter. We'll be putting all of that good information together, and we'll learn how to graph linear inequalities. Chapter 9, we will be talking about absolute value functions. We already know what absolute values are. We already know what functions are. And once again, we're going to put them together and talk about absolute value functions. As you can see, a lot of these are build-up chapters, and you'll see that it's that's just kind of the most helpful way or the most constant idea that is in this course outline. But continuing on, in chapter 10, we will talk about piecewise defined functions and step functions. Here we will really just be looking at those two separately. We'll be discussing piecewise defined functions, and then we'll be looking at step functions, and after that we're done with chapter 10, and we'll go on to chapter 11. Exponents and exponential functions. This is another step that we take. This is the introduction to exponents, but I will let you know from right now that exponents are exponents and exponential functions are very, very relevant in Algebra 2. Therefore, you want to make sure that you are paying attention in chapter 11, especially. It is just the introduction, but if you don't know the introduction, it's not going to be beneficial, and the introduction is a lot of information itself. We'll be discussing the exponents basic rules, and then we'll talk about how we can work with exponents and how we can work with rational exponents, how we can work with exponential functions, as well as what exponential growth is and what exponential decay is, and lastly, we'll talk about the transformations of the exponential functions. Then in chapter 12, we'll talk about geometric sequences. We're just going to talk about geometric sequences as a whole. And in chapter 13, we'll talk about polynomials. Like chapter 11, it is an introduction to polynomials. However, it's a lot of information that is going to be new, and it's going to be, again, a lot. And it's also going to be carried forward to Algebra 2. So in polynomials, we're going to first start off with the basics of polynomials, and then we're going to learn how to multiply polynomials, and we'll look at its special cases, and then we'll talk about factoring polynomials, and we'll look at their special cases. And lastly, we will talk about how polynomials will be used in Algebra 2 in the future. After that, we will go on to Chapter 14, quadratic functions. Quadratic functions, like Chapter 11 and 13, is very relevant in Algebra 2. So it's going to be a lot of new information itself in Algebra 1. However, you're going to need to make sure that you're getting it down no matter how much it may seem, because you'll need all that information when moving forward to Algebra 2. Quadratic formula, Chapter 14 in eCore's course outline is going to be the heftiest chapter. This is the chapter where there'll be probably the most content and most videos. We'll be talking about the basic of the functions, the basics of the function. Then we'll talk about the quadratic functions, vertex form and its transformations. We'll talk about using and graphing the vertex form. We'll talk about the standard form, and we'll talk about vertical motion in quadratic functions. We'll talk about how to find solutions when dealing with quadratic functions. We'll talk about simplifying radicals and solving quadratic equations, and we'll talk about completing the square when working with quadratic functions. Lastly, we'll be covering the quadratic formula. All very relevant information, very important information, and you will see this not only even carry on to Algebra 2, but carry on to even beyond Algebra 2, such as pre-calc and calc. Lastly, we'll be going on to Chapter 15, the roots. This is definitely one of the introduction. This is like intro to roots. We're not going to go into much detail. We're only going to be covering basically, we're just going to be studying the square root function, the cube root function, and their translations. In Algebra 2, you will be studying them more in depth. However, in Algebra 1, that's where we're going to end it, and you'll once again carry on with that in Algebra 2. So this was our general course outline for the Algebra 1 course that is offered here at eCoreAcademy. I do want to say that this is definitely not what we're going to go word for word by or action by action, I'd say. We're not going to necessarily not have any changes. We might have slight changes. However, this is a skeleton outline, so this is the main idea that we are going to follow. This is kind of the plan that we're going to follow, and if minor changes come here and there, then we will integrate it into our course outline. So yes, going on to the depth of material and the difficulty level of this course. Starting with the depth of the material, we're going to be covering quite a bit. That's a lot. We're going to be covering all those subjects that I just talked about, and we're going to be analyzing different types of problems and different subjects in detail. This course, you will get the basics and you will get the details. Therefore, it's going to be a lot of material. Compared to in class, you might not necessarily go into the extra tough problems. However, this is an enrichment platform, so we're trying to make sure that you have the best of both worlds. We're trying to make sure that you get the heftiest detail, or like the deepest detail that we can possibly give you, and that is what you should expect. The depth of this material compared to class notes or class courses would be the same, if not more, but probably more. So how difficult is this course? I do not want to put a tag to it. I believe that each individual can perceive the difficulty of a course differently. I may think it's easy, you may think it's hard, you may think it's easy, I may think it's hard, and it's really independent to what a person feels about it. However, if you do go in with a positive mindset, and if you go in without thinking about it being difficult, I can guarantee that it will be much more fun and it will seem easy to you. So I wouldn't, I would make use of that positive mindset. With that being said, I did mention that this is enrichment platform. Therefore, we are still going in depth. We are going to be covering material that you may not have even thought existed, or you may have not even seen if you've taken this course before. So doesn't mean it's going to be difficult. It just means that, you'll probably get the best of both worlds. You're not getting yourself into too much trouble. You're getting yourself into a very beneficial situation. After studying this course, you are already set up for success. And by taking this course, you are setting yourself up for success. And I want you to remember that. Algebra 1, like I mentioned before, is going to be popping up in every single subject that you take after this. Algebra 1 is the core of the other subjects. So it is very useful. Learning is the best way to gain your knowledge. So, with that being said, positive mindset, but be ready. So last thing we'll cover is what you will need for Algebra 1. We'll start with the prerequisites. You will need elementary math. Your basic operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. If you do not know that, I think it's not ideal for you to take Algebra 1 just yet. You might want to brush up on those skills. But after that, you do want to make sure that you know pre-algebra. Algebra 1 is based off of pre-algebra. So when I say that Algebra 2 is based off of Algebra 1, it's the same idea with Algebra 1 being based off of pre-algebra. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you do not know Chapter 1, I definitely recommend you taking a step back and studying pre-algebra. However, if you're okay with Chapter 1, you're ready for Algebra 1. So let's enjoy that. So I wouldn't worry too much. I think you just need to be self-aware with that. Next, talking about the materials that you'll need for this course. You will need a notebook. You will need a writing utensil so that you can take notes. People do prefer to take notes in different ways, and I do not want to tell you that you have to take it with a notebook or a writing utensil, because that is truly not the case. If you are self-aware of the fact that you learn better when you take notes on technology, such as with an iPad and a stylus, I rather you do that. Whatever helps you the best when taking to take notes and retaining that information, I suggest you do that. So paper and pencil is what most people prefer when doing math or when studying math. I do that, so I definitely would suggest that. If you're unsure of what your best note taking method is, or what you will benefit most from, trial and error, try both of them and see what has helped you more. Next up, you'll also need a calculator. You definitely need a regular calculator. You don't need a Texas Instrument calculator. However, the TI is recommended for if you want to be ready for geometry and Algebra 2 and pre-calculus and so on, because at the end of geometry you use a lot of the TI, and you'll use the TI in all of Algebra 1. So you're going to need the TI sooner or later. So if you want to take the opportunity to get one for yourself right now and studying Algebra 1, use the opportunity and take it. Go ahead. So last thing that you will need for studying Algebra 1 is the correct mental state. And basically, you just need to be ready and excited to learn. I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. If you have that positive attitude, you're going to make it so much easier on yourself, and you're going to enjoy the experience rather than worrying about rather than worrying about little things. And you will realize that the things that you would normally worry about, you're not worried about because you're enjoying it. So you wouldn't have so you wouldn't have that much to so you wouldn't really be worried. All I'm saying is if you're ready and excited to learn, you're ready to take on this course and you are ready to overcome your worries. Going on to the next thing that you'll need, it's self-discipline. You are taking an online course, and self-discipline is very important because no one here is here to hold you accountable. In class, your teachers are there to make sure that you do your homework. They'll check over your homework and all of that. I am not going to be able to see if you actually do your homework or not. So it's really up to you to, bringing it up to my next point, use your resources. Take advantage of the extra notes, practice worksheets, quizzes, and tests that we post on our website at eCoreAcademy. Use your resources by commenting any specific questions that you have down below, so you can get a better understanding of what you're studying. Enjoy this process, have self-discipline, and use your resources. All of that with a positive attitude is going to make this journey incredible. I'm really excited to teach you guys, and I hope you guys are just as excited to study Algebra 1 with me. We're gonna do this together, so I'm here. Make sure you comment any concerns that you have down below. All of your questions will be answered. This is your opportunity to make the most use of an online course that's gonna be, very relevant in your mathematical education. So lastly, I want to cover where my teaching materials will come from. My teaching materials are my class notes, practice worksheets that I've worked on, assessments that I've given, and textbooks that I've used in the past. I think I mentioned this before. I did take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, so I took it in class. Therefore, everything that I have, I will be presenting to you guys will be from my notes that have been given to me by my teacher. So with that being said, I do want to make sure that my teacher is credited for the material that I'll be presenting to you guys. I will not be mentioning her name for privacy purposes. So, however, yes, all the teaching materials are, my teacher is credited for my teaching materials. Lastly, I do want to cover that the course outline that you will see here, that you'll follow along here with eCoreAcademy, may not be the exact layout of what you are learning in school. Chances are it will be more detailed, and it will be in a different it will be in a different set out. It'll be in a different order of how we do things, and that's completely fine. At the end of the day, you are going to get your Algebra 1 education, and you're going to study this subject to its best, to the highest potential that you can. So you are still getting everything that you'll need for Algebra 1. You are setting yourself up for success, and you will be set up for success at the end. So you don't have to worry about that. Just keep in mind that it may be different, but don't let that affect you and your journey on this new course. That is all I have for you guys today. I do once again want to ask if you guys can please like and subscribe to our channel. It's very beneficial. It will help us reach out to those who will benefit from our content that we post and from our platform itself. We have a website. For more information that you guys would want, just go visit our website at www.ecoreacademy.org, as well as if you have any specific questions, you can email them to us on ecoreacademy@gmail.com, or you can just comment it down below on our YouTube channel. You'll definitely be answered. Lastly, you can just follow our social media for any updates that we have with our platform, any new courses, any new exciting news, and we have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. all at eCoreAcademy. Hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you guys are just as ready and excited to study Algebra 1 with me, teaching it to you guys. I'll see you guys in the next video where we'll be starting chapter 1. So have a great day or night whenever you guys are watching this. Stay safe. Bye.